we are exploring the nature of reality with Mark Johnson, the ninth immortal, who is one of the founders of National Qigong Association and the famous judge of numerous push hands tournaments.
Tai Chi in general. Only occasionally push hands, but always all the different styles of Tai Chi.
Wonderful. So it's been a long journey of exploring Tai Chi for you. And how would you describe, if you look back at the path that you have taken over the years, how would you describe any turning points or any major accomplishments that you've achieved during your journey of Tai Chi and Qigong studies?
Well, I'd say it's when I met my greatest teacher, my Taoist teacher. And before then I learned like one style from one teacher and another style from another teacher and that kind of stuff. That went on for maybe 20, 30 years. And then I met him and he had like 200 styles and he remembered them all. He had a photographic memory, by the way. And that's why he could remember all of them. So from him I got, you know, to learn 8 or 10, which I've almost all forgotten, but I have it on film so I can always look at myself and try and recapture them. But he had them all in his head, and depending upon who was in front of him, he would teach different styles for who he was kind of responding to their energy field and what they would need to go further and so forth. So I got to see a lot of stuff through him and learned a lot of stuff from him. And the biggest advantage to him, not only being the most extraordinary individual I ever met, and I've met a lot of them, because he showed me so many styles and so many ways to do so many things, I didn't get fanatic about being one way. So when I became a judge, I was always kind of in the center around which the other judges revolved. And as a result, I became in demand because I wasn't extreme or excessive in my judging. And it was because of his influence that I looked for if they got the principles down, I didn't care about the angle of the foot and that kind of stuff, like so many judges that learn one style. And then they're looking at another style and they're using the same criteria for their style and the other side. It gets ridiculous. And so many judges from China and Taiwan would come over here to these tournaments and end up that way with ridiculously high or low scores because they didn't have that background, the breadth of study that I have. They go very deep. They go a lot deeper than Westerners. A Chinese person will read the same book 100 times and we'll read 100 books on the same subject. So we go very broad, but we don't go deep. We're like little mud puddles. You know, people digging holes for water and they end up with the depth of a mud puddle. Oh, and then, oh, here's a new guru in town, so they go there and they dig another little mud puddle. It's ridiculous. But theirs is just as ridiculous. They go deep into one style and they don't know anything else. And if a guy across the street has a different style, they'll fight like cats and dogs for 40 years. They'll never even get to know each other. They'll badmouth each other constantly. And that's the way it used to be when I was in China learning this stuff. But we came over here and we started our own tournaments and stuff like that. This is like 25 years ago. And then we would invite them over. And they would stand on one side of the gymnasium with their students and badmouth whoever's out there with somebody else. But you know, after 5 years of that, they got to know each other. They were all forced to know each other. They started seeing that the other person had some wealth and that we got to come out with a few more secrets, you know, to match them. Pretty soon everybody's secret was out all over the place. We even had a weekend where they went skinny dipping together. There was about 3 of them in a big lake running around. So they learned that from us Westerners. A lot of people badmouth we Westerners that we're, you know, can't possibly know what the Chinese know because they're Chinese, you know, big deal. Well, that's one of the things they learn from us. And one of the things that hopefully I and other people learn from them is that the need for practice. And I don't see much of it. And I've watched for the last 30 years the quality going down each year, just slightly down, slightly down, slightly. They're not practicing enough. The teachers didn't learn it properly.
So what would be, from your point of view, a way to find balance between depth on one hand and the breadth on the other hand, because both seem to be a need.
That's for sure. I agree.
So how do you find that balance?
The way I did it in my life was to learn everything possible that there is horizontally and to go as deep and as high as possible. So I'm one with the universe, and you know, and yet I know a lot of facts in my head too. So there you have it. Perfect combination.
So you're talking about starting by exploring a lot of different subjects first, and then digging deeper in individual subjects.
Yeah, to the ones that resonate with you and your energy and what you need and so forth.
How would you know that something resonates with you?
What I've been noticing lately is that if it does with these new agers, you shouldn't be doing that one. So just the fact that something resonates with you doesn't mean too much anymore from my observation over the years. Because I don't think too many people know what they need, first of all. And their likes are usually conditioned by, oh, I don't want any conflict, I don't want any negativity, I don't want any, you know, I don't want in touch with my shadow. And, you know, I'm seeing these new, this sickeningly sweet smile and love, 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 and I'm intending this, and I love that, and we're all into the we space. Oh, I'm about to throw up. It's anyway. So you even give them a little a different way of looking at things, and oh, I don't feel safe around. So it's like they're too fragile, and they're not willing to have any kind of conflict whatsoever, or even a serious debate. So I find that sad, and people are out of touch with their shadows. They're projecting their shadows out onto everybody around them. Oh, that person's this and that person's this. I wouldn't presume to judge, but then they'd say something judgmental. And then they say, I'm one with the universe. And I said, oh, let's go watch cage fighting. But not that part of the universe.
That part of the universe sucks.
That's right. That's low level. That's low frequency. We're into the high, the ultraviolet stuff. Oh, God. So anyway, so to get back to your question, I do find that the young kids probably shouldn't go with what makes them feel good. They should go with what challenges them. And, you know, in the challenge, you learn something, for God's sake. If you just hang out with people of like mind, you don't really learn much. You just reinforce each other's fragility. They say, we're sensitive. They're not sensitive. They're fragile. I took this one lady down an aisle in this supermarket, and it had detergents, and she had to turn around and leave. She couldn't even go down the aisle because of the bad vibes of all those detergents with their, you know, toxins and so forth. And I think she broke out too, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
So that's fragileness. That isn't sensitivity. So anyway, you get the idea.
When it comes to the study of Tai Chi as well as Qigong, there has to be some degree of sensitivity so that you actually develop some sense of where the energy is flowing on one hand, but not become too sensitive so that you become overwhelmed easily.
Yes, exactly.
Well, how do you strike that balance?
The same as all other balances. You make mistakes in both directions and get the pain from either direction. If you're too sensitive, there's going to be pain in your life, or you lived in a very closed life. They run around in a bubble, or, you know, they have their little masks on, you know, that kind of stuff. That's got to be horrible. That's not living at all. Mm-hmm. So the pain of that eventually pushes them towards the center, and if you're too rambunctious like me and you're out there alienating everybody and and bad-mouthing the rest that put up with it, you know, then you realize, well, that's not quite what I had in mind either. So everybody gets forced back to the center if they go too extreme in either direction.
I see. So basically it's not a matter of having any kind of guideline of following a strategy to stay in a balance, but it's more like going to one extreme, going to another extreme, getting burnt out on both sides, and that basically will tell you, okay, stay more to the middle.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So it's like driving a bumper car, you know, you're bumping into the railings.
Right.
I see. And how does that apply to the practice, for example, of the therapeutic Qigong? Like, I know that you take personally if anybody around you is in pain, so you must have
personal insult to me, because there's no need for any pain around me. I got the magic touch. Yeah. So what about it?
How do you apply this approach when it comes to healing? Obviously, people who are in pain are already struggling with some degree of discomfort.
Yeah.
So do you kind of push them over the edge and see how they're going to survive, or how do you deal with it? How do you apply the magic touch that they're no longer in pain?
I just empty myself. That took 40 years to learn how to do that. So I don't intend anything, and I just get the hands near them. And if the universe wants to use what's coming out of my hands, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. So I just kind of get within proximity of them and keep the hands there. I'll help the meridians along a little bit. You know, if I feel a lot of heat, I'll move the heat out, move it around slightly, but not much more than that. I just stay empty, and somehow the universe knows what to do in that case, because almost everybody feels better, and I really haven't done anything from my perspective. But it takes you 40 years to get empty.
Right.
So,
Well, and you also experienced the remarkable healing from the
my own
airplane
accident, yeah,
crash.
yeah.
And that's something that I understand you also use to heal yourself.
Yes, and there again, I didn't. I was laying there when I came out of the induced. Can you imagine inducing a coma in somebody for 4 days? That's unbelievable that they would do that to somebody, but they did. So when I come out of it, you know, my face was out like a basketball, and eyeballs all over the place. They did a great plastic surgery job. When I came out of it, I thought, well, I think I'll do this and I'll do that. And I thought, well, the body knows what it needs more than I do. So I just went blank again. And the next thing I knew, I was racing the wheelchair up and down the aisles, and the nurses were chasing me. And we had an anger. I played with it. That's what I like about my philosophy of play. And I hope you've read my book.
Of course.
Is that no matter what you get, good or bad, you know, what's good and what's bad anyway. Most of what's bad is teaching you something, you know, but who wants to learn anything? So no matter what happens to me, just like that accident, I had fun with it. And then when it's good times, I have fun with the good times. And if something comes along that I didn't expect or don't particularly want, I have fun with that. So that's my secret
So
to quick healing.
You can heal yourself by doing that.
By doing nothing.
By doing that which is emptying yourself.
Yes,
and then allowing the universe to do the rest of the job.
Do its work, yeah.
Do you find that this is helpful to educate people who you help heal their pains or their whatever ails them, so that they would empty themselves, so that they continue working on themselves, so you don't have to do much of healing at all?
If I find a patient that has that capacity, then I do go into how to empty yourself. But most of them, they need a technique, and I give it to them. Now I said, what just happened with you is this, and then if you run down the meridian down your bad knee this way and up this way, it'll probably take away the inflammation and you won't have any pain. So I give them something to do, and that makes them feel empowered to some extent because they got something to do. And you can't go from totally fractured and painful to empty. Like I said, 40 years, so it isn't practical. I mean, I even know people in the Tai Chi business that advocate, they don't do form, you know, it's just like spontaneous movement. You can't go from, you have to go through form. You can't take somebody that's all split and in pieces and in pain and get spontaneous movement that amounts to anything or it'll last for any length of time. You've got to give them some structure. Then they can go beyond structure. Same thing in the art world. I spent a lot of years in the art world. And they got these hippies that came into the art school with me and a lot of other people, and they were free and they were sloshing, you know, with stuff around on the canvas, and it was undisciplined, it wasn't even creative. See, they thought they were going to go from their do what they want lifestyle into really good creative stuff, and they realized after a while they couldn't. And so they had to sit down, they had to learn a little perspective, and they had to learn this and that, and shadow and light and all that, and all the color mixes and how they mix. Once they got that, then you can be free to be really spontaneous.
Well, I know that you enjoy controversy and
yes.
debate, so I would love to take you up on this opportunity to debate the value of learning forms, because what you described when you talk about the artist learning perspective and learning how to mix colors, that is not the form, it's the principle, like the principle of perspective. So there are plenty of principles in Tai Chi, like for example, whether or not you want to be centered, whether or not you want to be double weighted, whether or not you want to use the whole body power, whether or not you want to meet the hard with soft, and various other principles like that. And that is what reminds me of those artists who were learning the particular principles of, for example, perspective. If you're practicing the brush stroke, that may be a little bit closer to the form. So you're just doing this brush stroke over and over again. But then form would be like doing 108 brush strokes, following a particular pattern. And that is something that I wonder whether or not it would be helpful to become a great artist. So you see how we went from the principles to just doing the form. And then most people just want to emulate the form. They pay attention to the form rather than the essence anymore.
Okay, so you're making a distinction between form and principle.
Absolutely.
And I was too, and we were actually using the terminology roughly the same. So I agree that the principle comes first, and then that makes the form easier. But without the form, and I teach Chinese calligraphy, been doing it for years, and I know one Taoist teacher used to come through with his flute in New Mexico when I lived in New Mexico, and he'd get these rich Marin ladies, 50 of them come out there and they'd do calligraphy all day long. Well, they couldn't even hold the brush right, first of all, and he would get up there and he'd do these gorgeous things that's after his 50 years of practice. And he's quite famous anyway, and he's really good at it. He would do something nice, and then they would look at it and try to imitate it, and it would be hideous. and he didn't take the time to teach them how to do a horizontal stroke for 20 years and a vertical stroke. And well, once you get that, then you can start getting creative with it like he is. So I kept seeing the horror of, and he made no attempt to tell them that I'm going to turn you into we're just going to go out in New Mexico desert and we're going to swish around and have a good time. We're going to feel good. Okay, fine. If that's all you want, then fine. He did that. But if you want to learn calligraphy, and it takes a lot of discipline, and then you can get spontaneous and creative with it, and then it's a beautiful, well-balanced character. But before that, they just turn out to be hideous caricatures.
Well, so
without the practice.
to graduate from character to character,
Yeah.
one actually needs to develop certain understanding of balance and precision of movement, and and level of pressure that you apply with a brush, and when to suspend the arm so that the brush would gradually remove itself from the paper, and all of that, so it creates the piece of art almost, or it can be called a piece of art that is hard to emulate. And if a person looks at just this piece of art and they say, you know what, I can do this, and so they just start kind of following the outline. It's like paint by the numbers.
Right.
And that is what I perceive as the major focus on form rather than essence.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So trying to paint by numbers, oh, I'm going to make my character look that it follows the same outline. It's going to look just like this one that the master calligrapher did. Well, that's going to look hideous even though it may look the right shape.
Right.
It's like doing Tai Chi. It may look like it's the same movement that you want to emulate.
Yeah.
But there is no essence because there is no energy awareness, there is no precision, there is no understanding of balance, and so that creates the Tai Chi that you probably have been criticizing, that deteriorating with years.
Yes, that's true. Well, I'm not so sure we are even disagreeing with anything here. So
Darn.
let's let's find out if there is one. I won't be able to sleep tonight unless I'm really in a true distinction here. So that's how we learn.
So what I wonder, if you say that, oh, there's such funny approach to doing Tai Chi without forms, you must have observed people who say, I'm going to do Tai Chi and I'm just going to move my hands without any rhyme or reason, and this is going to be my authentic Tai Chi, right?
Right, yes.
So when the person moves and he or she observes how that feels, like is that, well, how do you know that you resonate with something? Well, try it. Go to one extreme, try to go another extreme. So for example, if a person moves and they go, oh, I'm just going to go really high with my arm for whatever reason, or I'm going to do with a lot of intensity, and then okay, this kind of doesn't feel great. that feels kind of awkward. This throws me off balance. Now, what else can I do so that I can find more balance and harmony with my movement? And then suddenly, the person may discover that which people try to achieve by doing form, which is the balance, precision, and power, through experimentation. And they'll never forget how to experience that because they have tried other options. And so they know how it feels differently, rather than just going straight for the correct way to do it according to certain authority.
Okay, if you're one-on-one, that sounds doable and ideal, but you know, you get 30 people in a class, you just can't say, okay, move in a way that you feel is spontaneous and I'll tell you why it isn't. And then work with them individually. You're going to have to do this, and it's to get some center in all this chaotic movement that you're doing. And then you go to the next person, do whatever you want and I'll watch you. It's just not practical anymore.
Well, there is a fantastic practice of Zhang Zhuan, or standing Qigong. And then the way that I practice and teach it is not only to stand like a pole, but imagine that you are a seaweed and you are surrounded with underwater currents that may move your body, which is a seaweed, and you feel how these currents are undulating you, how it creates a certain wave-like motion through your body. There is no particular technique to follow and no form to adhere to. It's a matter of developing the perception of how you can move like a seaweed. What would you say about that kind of practice?
So that's an instance where you can have a lot of people in the same room doing roughly the same thing.
Yeah, you can have 100 people doing the same thing.
Sensitive to their own movement.
Exactly.
And that's fine too. I mean, I think that's legitimate.
Darn, I thought you would say, oh, this is crap.
Well, it can be. It all depends what they're doing in front of you. Everybody's different. Somebody will pick it up pretty quickly and really be true to their nature, and someone won't. So you still have to jump from one to one constantly like that. But if you have something, and I think if you're teaching even a standard form, and I don't like most forms, I find them rigid, and I created my own as a result. I find them rigid and mostly martial application, and not even that. That isn't even done well anymore. I started out, it wasn't anything but martial art in the old days. So I learned every move as a martial experience, and then I got sick of that and went off into the healing aspect. And now I'm coming back and seeing them doing their so-called martial moves, and there's not much even martial there anymore, which is kind of sad. So,
You're talking about developing your own form.
Yes, but it's still based on the principles. Let's put it that way. So, and I guess that's what you're suggesting is possible. Get the principles through, and the form as to what you're doing doesn't matter. And I agree with that. I agree with that to some extent. But if they want to learn Tai Chi, it's got to look something like Tai Chi. But if you're just out there seaweeding around, and you know, that's fine. But you can't call it Tai Chi.
Right, that's the Qigong exercise, obviously, not
Yeah.
Tai Chi.
Oh, I see. Good. Yeah.
So, for example, in Tai Chi, there are plenty of moves that teachers teach and translated into the English language. The names of these moves create a completely opposite image in the mind of the student, as opposed to the essence of the movement. Like, for example, let's say, repel the monkey. Well, the movement that people pay attention to probably is the repulsing movement. That you're trying to get rid of the monkey, right?
Right.
Whereas the primary movement is actually with the opposite arm, because it goes in the same direction where the center of mass is going, which is backwards.
Yeah.
So it's the backward pull that's the primary movement, the objective of this motion.
Yes.
It has very little to do with monkeys or repulsion.
Right.
So what would you say if people are just paying attention to the form and they're just learning, oh, this is the move called repel the monkey. I'm going to just do the form because this is what I've been taught. They will probably never learn even what the essence of this movement is.
That's true. And the way I used to teach it is that I taught it as a martial art, and I was telling that you're pulling someone towards you while you hit them in the Adam's apple, you know. And after a while, they all got turned off by that to where they went to the healing. And I said, if you want to heal yourself, you've got 3 meridians going down the inside of your arm, and if you do that with the intention of moving those 3 meridians, your hand will turn red, and you don't even have to touch it. So you did that, and then you come up and you do the heart meridian is down. So this is a way of opening the heart meridian itself. And there are entire styles. For my teacher, I learned a earth style, human style, and a heaven style. And the human style is centered all around the heart. Every move comes in and out of the heart. And we used to have a big red ring there from it, and sweat would come down from it from after about 15 minutes out. It's about a 20-minute style. And every move came around and out of the heart for one way. And like in the Chen style, you're down here with your root and so forth. But this one was moved from the heart, and you create these vortexes of energy, and you step through them, and you run them around and out your heart and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I showed them the application for those that are interested, but then I went into the healing aspect, which is my emphasis. And then I can even go into the cosmic, how the move is expressing the way the universe moves and works. It works in circles. Every move is a circle I do. There's none of this linear stuff anymore. It's all circular. And then there are spirals. Nature creates spirals, so there's a lot of spirals in this move called the 8 extra meridian move. And so you can teach it from a martial aspect, from a meridian aspect, and from a cosmic aspect.
So when you're working with the earth realm, you started with the lower dantian,
yes,
and then move on to the middle dantian.
And the stance is lower too.
And then go to the upper dantian when it comes to the cosmic?
Yep.
So what does that look like?
It's incredible. Yeah, something like that. The other one is all up and out the third eye. So this one's out here, and then this one's out here. So you're going through the major dantians in all the movements. And there's a lot of up the spine and over the head, and then out the third eye moves. My innate teacher has some of those styles on tape over there.
Who does?
And my teacher has those 3 styles on tape over there.
But Dharma?
No, below that. My teacher, who likes to be anonymous.
Anonymous teacher, okay.
Yes, that teacher. We have some VHSs of him doing that stuff. The three different dantians stimulating it.
Interesting.
And they're very fluid, first of all. And there's this sense of balance. You don't overextend anywhere, and it isn't, phone booth Tai Chi either. And so it isn't either extreme, and it's very fluid and it's very powerful. You can feel the power of the move due to the fluidity and the many years of developing the Qi. I mean, he had poisonous palms and stuff like that. And he only demonstrated once in the 23 years I knew him. But once was enough.
On you?
I did it on me. It's in my book, by the way, or the new book. I have to give you my new version. It's twice the size of the other. Because people keep sending in new ideas. They said, Mark, you told about this thing that he showed us, but you didn't say this thing. I said, oh yeah. So then I pile out another chapter. And then the next thing you know, the book's twice the size probably than when you read it. So.
Yeah, the first edition was relatively small. So
yeah, like 90 to 100 pages. Well, now it's 200 and something. And it's from all this feedback I'm getting from all these other students that I had forgotten about stuff he showed. So it's in my book now.
Wonderful. And when we talk about the universe and the heavenly realms and how we can connect with them through our movements and energy practices, I'm curious if you can share with us your perspective on the big picture, on reality. Like I see the Chi equals MC square. Yeah. So if we talk a little bit about the big picture, how would you describe your understanding of what the universe is and how we as humans can be in harmony or in balance with it?
And reflect it, and to be a conduit for it.
Right.
I don't see myself anymore as a drop of water in the great ocean of life, the universe. I am the entire ocean manifesting through a drop of water. And that's a completely different perspective on the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
The entirety of the ocean is reflected through every drop of water. And I have some holograms in the closet there that I made, where you can have a picture of a globe, a three-dimensional globe out in space looking through the hologram.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can snap off a piece of the glass and look through it, and there's the entire globe there too. See what I mean?
Right.
So each piece has the entire thing coming through it. So we're like holograms. And that's how I live my life now, finally. And that's what I try to encourage in other people. And I want everybody to feel comfortable with all those levels. You know, if they want martial art, fine. And I'll show them martial application of each move. And that's fine. It's like they're just different frequencies, by the way. If you take H2O and you have a certain frequency, you got an ice cube, you got it's a whole new universe, a whole different universe of ice cubes. They bang into each other, they can't interpenetrate each other, that kind of stuff. But it's still H2O, it's just low frequency. It's still divine, is what I'm getting at. Then you heat it up a little bit and you got the water realm. Everything's fluid and everything's fluid and interconnected and so forth. And that's just the same H2O at a slightly higher frequency. And that presents another universe entirely. And then you speed it up to the steam realm. It's like, wow. And so it's all available to us because we are the entirety of all of this. So why limit your playgrounds to just one or the other? I say play with all of them. And, you know, I get with the purists, and they come in and they see me watching cage fighting. You know, how can you possibly watch that, you know? And then I'll be around crude people and I'll merge with the universe and they'll get all excited and what the hell was all that weird stuff, you know? It's like, so I just have fun at all three realms, and they're all divine, and I don't particularly prefer one over another. And this is the way I think humanity, I would like to see humanity going in that direction. So I try to be a living example of it. And
excellent.
Specifically, how do you well, you can't merge, you can't will it, you can't intend it. I just wrote a paper called The Negative Side to Positive Thinking, which more or less says positive thinking doesn't really work, mostly, because that's the secret. The big secret is it doesn't work. With, you know, like 95% of the people that do positive thinking all day long, it doesn't work. And it's because your conscious mind is such, it's like the ice cube realm. And your conscious mind is such a small part of your vast being, and if it's out of touch with the good old dragon here, which is part of everybody, you know, if you integrate with your shadow, you have twice the power. Everybody says, oh, I want all yang and I don't want any yin, and don't mention yin to me, no negativity. Nuts. Anyway, so if
that creates imbalance in itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's a total imbalance. And so there, if what you're visualizing and intending and praying for, like everybody says, spend a lot of time doing these days, if it's somewhat in harmony with your shadow, and if that's in harmony with the way the universe is flowing at the time, so you got all those realms you got to integrate. I'm big on integration. It'll work, and there's like 3% of the people that are somewhat in touch with their shadow, but most people aren't. They totally repress the hell out of it, and then they project it out onto others and see this evil and everybody else's conspiracies everywhere, and it's just people that are totally out of touch with their shadows. And that's my new rant these days, is that I'm seeing that as the biggest hindrance to learning Tai Chi or Qigong or anything, is they're out of touch with 50% of their being, and the need to integrate that. And then when that's integrated, how will that allow? A-L-L-O-W. You can't force a transcendent experience. It happens practically in spite of you. You can get yourself ready, you know, empty if it's coming. And if it doesn't come, it doesn't bother you, because whatever does come is what's happening anyway. So have fun with that. So,
or deal with it at least.
Yeah, deal with it. Make a decision. Do something. Decide not to do it.
Well, I suspect that you're heading towards integration of different realms, and
Yes.
how humanity would need to learn how to do that, and you are being the role model of doing exactly that. Now, obviously it's crucial to have role models for any learning purposes. What other steps or bits of wisdom do people need in order to develop this level of integration?
They don't need any more information. Everybody's got plenty of information. They don't practice, and they don't want to be discomforted by facing their shadow and their fears and their pain. So I always tell people that if they're in pain, just sit down and go into it, and then you'll come out the other end free of it. It'll generally work its way out. And there's Qigong exercises, and there's holotropic breath work, and there's a lot of different ways of getting really in touch with whatever's blocked in there and releasing it. But it takes guts, and it takes vision, and it takes the need to do that, and most people aren't willing. They don't want to be that discomforted.
So is there any way that you can think of to develop this level of gutsiness or this level of courage that people would need to muster in order to be able to do this?
Well, I do the pull method, and life does the push method. You know, if you just sit around me for 3 or 4 days, you're inspired to, hey, you can be playful all the time, and that's something I think I want. So see what I mean? I'm pulling them up. But if someone isn't inspired by that, then life will push them up. You know, they'll get enough pain that it'll turn it around. Pain is a big liberator, but nobody wants to go near it, so they don't liberate themselves. They just keep piling on the pain pills so they don't feel anything, and then they take their little antidepressants and antipsychotics so they don't feel anything or sense anything anymore either. That's not living, for God's sake. That's functioning. We're not here to function, for heaven's sakes. So I say get into your pain and get into your shadow side, get into your anger. Anger and pain and everything, it's an energy. It's simply an energy force that you've decided to repress for whatever reason. And if you get into it, all that energy is released, and you can channel it any way you want it for creativity and health and all that kind of stuff.
Well, people are probably afraid of anger, so again, it's the matter of fear and
Afraid of, yep.
They probably experienced somebody being angry at them, and
Yes,
they
that's
were
true.
on the receiving end of anger that didn't feel great.
That's true.
And perhaps they also experienced some anger towards somebody, and perhaps caused some pain to another, and again, they saw the cause and effect, and it didn't feel like this is what they want. So perhaps they suppress anger for the reason of not causing more pain or discomfort to themselves or others. So there must be a way to deal with anger without angering yourself to the point that you just start exploding.
Oh, I'm all for the explosion part.
So catharsis.
There is way of getting in touch with your repressed anger without hollering at other people, and that is do it on your own, or with a transpersonal psychologist or whatever, or the breathing methods that Qigong can. If you do some a rapid breathing, it starts building an incredible charge in you, and it will rot out whatever. You'll start screaming, "I hate my mother," you know, and then it's out. It's finally out, and you've been carrying it around for 40 years just because you hate to admit that I hate my mother, when in fact you do, and probably have good reason for it. But they repress it; they don't get it out. So I'm saying, release the anger and the pain and the fear on your own, or with someone that knows what they're doing, a professional of some kind, and hope that they know what they're doing. Most of the talk therapies are totally useless. Let's talk about your mother. Oh God, you know, it does nothing. It doesn't give you the incredible force you need to ride out that incredibly stuck force. It's just too superficial. It's somewhat, I mean, I know people that wash their hands 200 times a day, and they can tell you exactly why they do it. Guilt, and I'm dirty, and there's blood all over my hands, and I did horrible things when I was young, and all that kind of stuff. And so they know exactly why they're doing it. But
So
they'll go back and wash their hands another 100 times right after they tell you that. It's like it's not getting rid of that impulse that's still there. So I say get into it and relive and re-experience the horror of that, even if it takes you into a past life. I don't care, especially if it takes you to past life. You don't want to be dragging those things from lifetime to lifetime. What a burden. And so get into it and experience it totally and release it totally, and then you're free.
And speaking of past lifetimes, obviously this gives me a glimpse into your belief system that there is such possibility of lifetimes.
Not a belief system, it's an experience system.
An experience. Would you care
I
to
don't
share?
believe in reincarnation, I've re-experienced them.
Yeah, could you share with us anything that you care to share about the reincarnation?
Sure, do you have a couple of hours?
We'll
How
do
much
what we
time
can.
do we have left?
Oh, we can do it probably in 20 minutes. Like
Well, reincarnation is the way things are. Let's put it that way. That's the character for Tao. The character for Tao is a picture of the way things are. And it's just that simple. And it's a picture of an eyebrow with an eyeball, which means consciousness. The Chinese, they'll draw a picture of an eyeball with an eyebrow, stylized, and it means awareness or consciousness. And then the thing with the long tail at the bottom is somebody moving. It's like you can see their pathway up to where they are now. They
Like a
went from
comet.
here to, huh?
a comet.
Yeah, exactly. A little trail behind the comet. So you put the two together, it's like awareness in motion. That's what the way things are. There's like Einstein said. They said Einstein sum up everything you've learned, and he said something is moving. That's about as specific as he could get. That's pretty darn accurate. And that's what the character for Tao means. And what got me into that? Where was I going with that? Oh, so reincarnation is the way things are. Get used to it. I'm tired of explaining this. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. I worked for IONS. There are scientists who investigate this woo-woo stuff, and I've been doing that for 40 years too. And one of my assignments was to go out and investigate every case of reincarnation that came our way at the time. And most of it, 80% of it, was total nonsense, it was fantasy. And the researchers wouldn't even take any evidence unless there was factual stuff you could look into. Mm-hmm. So there's some books. Ian Stevenson wrote an incredible book. He had 2,800 cases that he went out on, and he would only take stuff that he and his research team could research, yes it happened, or no it didn't. Or they would take the person to the city or town where they said they lived and meet their offspring that are 80 years old now, and tell things about their lives to them. And there's a lot of, and there's a book on photographs of, there's a book, 300 pages out of the 2,800 cases of photographs of the young kid that said, I was shot, and put under a tree, and he was born with birthmarks of like a shotgun wound in the neck. And then they eventually went to the tree and they found bones of somebody under this tree. And he said this guy in a neighboring town did it, and they got him. This was in India. And the guy confessed. He said, I've been living with this guilt all my life. I'm glad you finally caught me. And it's a rather bizarre way to get caught. The kid's reborn and remembers it, that kind of stuff. So India's had quite a few trials based on, a young kid saying, I was this and they killed me and I want some restitution. So there's a book of that with photographs. A kid will be born with a deformed arm. And then they went back, there was the Civil War guy, had his arm blown off in the Civil War. And this young kid says, I was in the Civil War and I was in Gettysburg. And I can tell you exactly which street I was on, that kind of stuff. And I can tell you where I was buried in the backyard of my home, and you'll find that there's a missing left arm. So they go there and they get permission, they dig it up and there's a missing left arm. That kind of stuff. It happens all the time. Especially in countries that are somewhat sympathetic to reincarnation. In this country, they tend to poo-poo it, but still, it still happens in amazing amounts. A young kid on an aircraft carrier, Catholic family, and they didn't know what to do with it, but he was so specific and insistent that he knew everybody. He knew everybody's name. He knew the name of the aircraft carrier. And they finally had a meeting. They called the living people that were still alive that worked that aircraft carrier. And the kid went out and had a reunion. Well, this was like the History Channel or something like that. This wasn't wacko TV, wacko computer stuff. So anyway, the evidence is overwhelming. Get with it. I mean, the horror of your present being probably goes back a long way. And Armageddon isn't going to save your little butts. It's not the end of the world. 2013, I said nothing's going to happen. the calendar just stopped there, no big deal, and everybody gets excited. Now, so I tell them, your pathetic lives are going to continue, so get used to it and change. You know, you're not going to have the end of the world, and Jesus isn't going to come down again and save your little butt, so you made horrible decisions, and you're going to reap what you sow. It's that simple. And if you don't sow it in this life, you're going to sow it in the next life. You reap what you sow, so be damn careful about what you're reaping, you know.
So you're talking about karma, about
yes.
cause of an effect.
Sure, karma, cause and effect. And
It sounds very Buddhist. I know that you are a Taoist.
But Taoists believe in reincarnation also.
And in karma as well.
Yes, and karma as well, yep.
They must have learned it from Buddhists.
Maybe. I don't know, I think Taoists came first. Yeah, Taoists, some of the principles of Taoists are long before the Buddha.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when we look at the law of cause and effect, I would say that it's the most efficient way to get smart and wise up, because you start connecting the dots. Oh, I do this, I get this result. I do that, I get that result. Trying to get that result by doing this is not working for some reason. Damn.
Right.
That's and if I keep doing this, hoping to get that result, that's insanity.
Yes, keep repeating the same thing over and over again, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that even in the practice of Qigong and Tai Chi and similar disciplines, a lot of practitioners aren't really looking at how doing this is going to provide me the results that I'm really coming here for. Like why are people doing, for example, these flowery movements that they think are the good thing to do? And what is it that brought them to study Tai Chi, and why is it that they're doing this?
Yeah, what do they want from it?
What are they? Yeah, what's the dream that they want to manifest? Speaking the more esoteric language, and if they realize, oh, doing this gives me a result that I don't really care for, maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I don't need to actually try to form myself into a particular paradigm or particular mold that is expected of me. That will be called a good student. But instead, how is it that I can be more in the flow of the Tao, of the things that in the universe? And then how can I be more in touch with my own true nature in such a way that I will be simultaneously in touch with the true nature of everything?
I agree. There again, we're back to the thing, it's like an individual class for each individual person, though, that almost is required. And my teacher used to test me constantly when he was teaching me acupuncture. Somebody come up to walk to the clinic, and he'd say, quick, tell me what's wrong with them, by the way they're moving. Quick, come on. And,
that's what I do with my students, yeah.
Yeah, and so eventually after a while, and people are always amazed at some of the weird stuff I'll say to them. We'll be talking about something, and I'll say, look at your left foot, you know, what does that try to tell you? And it's going thump, 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 thump. It's like they think I'm observant, but it's just so obvious, and most people don't pay too much attention to body language and what it means. And face reading, I had to study face reading, what the facial features are telling you about something. So I don't listen to what anybody tells me anymore, as everybody will attest to. I'm sitting there reading their face, and I'm watching their body language and all that kind of stuff. And learning more about them than all the BS they give me verbally, because they don't even know it's BS, for one thing. So watch the bodies.
They just tell you what they know about themselves, but most of what they are is not what they know. What they know is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's right.
And so you have the ability to pay attention to the deeper part of the iceberg than that they are.
Yes.
More so than they are capable of seeing themselves.
Yes, and that's how I run my classes, is that, and I keep them small so I can do that individual attention. I said, now see how you made that move? You didn't just step forward in a graceful manner, you fell into the step, boom, and then your next foot is you get the foot out there and then you fall into that, and then you fall into that. And so then I'd say, and I always have to test it with my scientific background, then I always say, do you go through life creating one disaster after another and then saying, how did I get into this mess? And then 6 months later you meet another jerk of a boyfriend, and how did I get into that mess? He's so damn similar to the other one. You know, boom, it's like they're going boom, 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 you know, through life. And it's ungraceful, it's clomping around. and it's the vision is down, they're looking right here and they aren't seeing the big picture, and they're kind of falling forward in life. They just fall blindly forward. It's so obvious, and that's the kind of thing I say. Now if you take a minute and you do this and you start gliding a little bit, you're going to be more graceful, and you raise your vision a little bit, you know, your life's going to be a lot better. So that's what I do. I watch them move, and I tell each one individually what I feel they should do. And by the way, I don't share with people. New Age people share all the time. I just tell them what I think they need to know, and that's that. I don't share.
Interesting.
So I can't stand it. And love too. Everything is love, love, love. Oh, I love those shoes. I love the way you put that sentence together. I love it when you talk dirty to me. It's like, what does love mean? What the hell does that word mean when it's used in so many contexts? It doesn't mean anything anymore. And everything's awesome. And somebody said, oh boy, look at those awesome socks. I said, the Grand Canyon is awesome, but those socks aren't awesome. And if everything's awesome, then when something you really see something is awesome, it doesn't have any meaning when you say it anymore. So stop using these grandiose words for everything. It loses its meaning. People, and these young kids today are texting they don't even know anything about body language because they don't meet each other anymore. It's just, they're learning their little buttons and they're, 20 feet away and they don't look at each other and they're talking to each other, texting each other. They don't know a thing about body language or what it means, and everybody's so going, how did you know that? And how did you know this? Well, it's because I look, for one thing. I look out at whoever's in front of me, It's nuts. The world's going nuts, and I got 7 billion people I got to save. So I need some help. So, give me some help here. I got 7 billion I got to save.
The easiest help that I would...
I'm tired just thinking about it. Come to think about it.
Well, the easiest help that I can think of is transitioning and helping people to transition from intention to attention.
Yes.
And instead of intending something that they think they want. And of course, how much do they really know what they need? So they may want something, but they may actually not need it. So when they get it, they don't still have their needs met, or they get something and they wish that it didn't get. On one hand, and on the other hand, even if they do need that which they are trying to get, there is a big assumption that this is going to be the best thing for me, and that's going to make me happy. So there's a big expectation that is being built. And if that expectation is not met, well, then there's suffering, there's disappointment, there's disillusionment. And at the same time, even if you get that and you feel happy, well, it's temporary because it doesn't last forever. And so the happiness that is hinged on the expectations of that which you try to get is basically a way to create your own suffering and create your own nightmare.
Yes, exactly.
So once we see that basically intentionality, which is a very powerful and very popular term nowadays, is actually the royal road to creating a nightmare out of this dream that we call our daily life. Then what are the options? Well, how about attention? Instead of intending something that we think is right, simply paying attention, meaning observing.
Be aware. I like the word aware.
Being aware, observing, recognizing that, oh yeah, this is something that I can recall that reminds me of something else that I've experienced. So there are some lines that connect the dots, so to speak. And at the same time, there doesn't have to be attachment to that which you're observing, because, well, you can be attentive to this or that. There is a sense of equanimity. So that essentially creates the level of consciousness that allows the person to snap out of the paradigm of thinking that I want this, and if I don't get it, I'm suffering, and if I get this, then I'm going to be happy. So there's the duality, there's the black and white perception. And so essentially offering the opportunity to simply learn to be attentive is going to also resolve this black and white dualistic perspective on things.
Oh, we certainly agree with that.
Well, that's how basically I
and that's
wanted
very
to help
Buddhist. But there's a passivity to it. When everything's equanimity, there's a passivity to what happens. Well, good or bad, I can't say this is good or bad. I'm just going to be kind of passive about it and let things happen.
Right, there is nothing
and
good
I
about
was a Buddhist, I studied with Suzuki Roshi before he died.
sorry.
So I was sitting there facing a wall with the best of them and trying to get in the trying to go with the flow. But I met my Taoist teacher. He said, I'll go with the flow. He says, that sounds Buddhist to me, the strivers. He said, the Taoists are the arrivers and the Buddhists are the strivers.
What is the strivers? The strivers are
Are
not
the
going with the
Buddhists.
flow.
Huh?
They're not going with the flow. The strivers
that's
are
true,
striving
too.
something.
And even if you're going with the flow, it's still not the deeper flow, because Master Nice said we all have the creative spark of the Creator. We have the spark of creativity. You don't have to go with the flow all the time and be totally equanimous. You can decide, this sucks and I don't feel like doing it, or I just don't feel like doing it. And I know this opportunity is coming to me, but I don't care, I don't want it. You can make decisions and still be free. The Buddhists say you have to be free by having equanimity of mind.
Well,
And the Taoists say that's not necessary.
well, decision making based on something more intelligent than just an idea that this is good and this is bad.
Right, yes.
Would be based on energy awareness
Yes.
and feeling the resonance,
Yes.
and recognizing that if you resonate with something, it doesn't have to be good in terms of label good that you put on it, because the good label means that you, every time you look at it, it's supposed to be good. You don't even have to look at the thing, you just read the label.
Yeah.
And it's also supposed to be some kind of social agreement that if you read this label and say it's good, other people must do the same thing. Read the same label and say, oh yeah, this is good, they'll agree. But we know that what's good for one person may not be so good for another,
Sure.
and vice versa. And so that literally dispenses with the idea of good and bad, replacing it with the idea of energy resonance, and making decisions based on energy resonance, which is authentic in the present moment, and it's based on observation rather than assumption.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay.
Darn, we're not arguing again.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I just thought of something I wanted to say earlier, though, and that is, I didn't want to give the impression a few minutes ago that when I was saying the karmic thing is that you reap what you sow. Therefore, here you are in this life responsible for everything you did before that you can't even remember. So what does that mean? Nothing. There is, when I was in that phase, and I was a Hindu for 10 years, and so when I was in my Hindu phase and saying to that, if a brick fell off a roof and hit me in the head, I'd say, now what did I do to cause that? It seemed to me it's like, I'm causing everything. Well, I finally gave it up in my Taoist phase, which is, sometimes just bricks fall through the air, it's a, what do you call it, chaos. Taoists love chaos, and they give room for chaos. Everything isn't cause and effect. There's totally different dimensions out there. There's just total freaking chaos. So don't try to take on every time you get hit in the head with a brick that you did something. It isn't necessarily true. Sometimes it is. You have to have the intuition to know whether this is just a chaotic random thing or you actually brought it about, and if you're quite convinced you brought it about, then work on what you did to bring it about. So that sort of thing.
But what's interesting about the chaos is that in a chaotic world, the seemingly chaotic movement of everything, it still has certain laws of physics. For example, if there is more pressure here, air moves out of the area of higher pressure to lower pressure, so it creates the flow in this direction. So there is some reason behind this seemingly chaotic movement. For example, the brick, why does the brick fall off that particular place in the wall? Well, I don't know. That's obviously the weak link. So in other words, just like the chain breaks at the weak link, well, the brick falls out where it's least attached. The thing is that you happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, or right place at the right time, I don't know. And essentially that gives you an opportunity to recognize that, why did you end up here? What took you to get here? And is there anything that you can learn from this experience? I mean, if you're still alive, being hit by the brick, perhaps you can learn something. Some people say, well, there's nothing to learn here. I just got injured, it's an accident. And on the other hand, some may say, well, so I'm walking past this building that's being under construction. I know how crappy nowadays the construction is. They can't even lay brick. And so when I walk by, maybe I should pay attention to this wall. Maybe I should actually walk just a few feet away from it instead of getting hit by bricks each and every time I walk by. So in other words, you connect the dots again and see that why did you get hit, for example, on this particular part of your body? It's like in martial arts. You know, some people say, I don't know why, but I always get hit in my liver or something. And I say, well,
that hurts too, by the way.
no doubt, but there is the reason why you get hit in the liver. You keep your right arm too high. Why? Well, because perhaps you have too much tension in the shoulder. Perhaps your liver needs some attention. So the energy of the strike that's being projected at you is going to go in the area where there is greatest energy deficiency. So if the liver is energetically deficient, they're going to attract the punch. So the energy, we're not just looking at the punch as the physical object or event, it's an energy process. The delivers a certain amount of chi into your liver. If you process it without reaction, so you don't tense up and become a perfect target to punch, but adapt and flow with it, then you actually absorb that energy and become healthier. It's in the sense acupuncturing, as I call it. Instead of acupuncture, it's obviously a pun. So how can we recognize the healing aspect of this experience, like the cage fighting? Those guys get messed up on the octagon. Well, they actually experience the injuries according to their proclivity to get injured in certain areas. Something is deficient in a certain area of the body that is going to attract the strike. Well, how can I develop the greater strength, for example, in this area of my body, so I don't attract strikes like this anymore? The person will perhaps still want to strike, but will have to really look hard where to strike because there is no energy deficiency here. Or they will spend so much time trying to find the area where to strike me, the fight is going to be over. So in other words, how do you win the fight without getting injured, perhaps even without fighting?
Yes, that's why I like cage fighting, by the way. It's testimony to the power of integration. You know, 40 years ago, there was the karate people over here saying this is the best style on the planet, and there's the taekwondoers and the jiu-jitsu people, and they're all, finally they put them all in a cage, they're, all right, let's just see who is better. And each style has its own emphasis, and when they spar with each other, they limit themselves to the rules of that style. And they all have weaknesses, and now these mixed martial artists are learning the tricks of all of them, and they can beat anybody, any single person that's only been trained in one thing. They're going to get beat by somebody that's studied and practiced to some extent. You don't have to be great at all of them. You just have to know the weakness of each one of them and adjust accordingly. So you've integrated the whole freaking thing, and that makes you much more powerful. And that goes back to my need and my pursuit of integration of everything I've learned.
Do you teach any mixed martial artists nowadays?
No, I have a student that is one, and he just fought recently in San Jose. He was on the card. Tough little bugger, but it's a heck of a way to make a living, is the way I look at it.
Well, I would imagine that a lot of mixed martial artists and you know, UFC contenders would love to receive the training from a master who understands the reasons why we're mixing things in a way that allows the strongest components to come to the surface and become more prevalent, and with the kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And at the same time also realize that it's not just about hurting the other person enough so that he doesn't fight you anymore. And it's also about developing the strength of character and perhaps a certain healing process. So you no longer need to fight to prove to others that you are meaner and better than everybody else. And at the same time, it also creates the dynamic of personal development in which you would hope you would transcend the whole notion of fighting another person for the sake of fighting, and instead integrate with the person as if that is your shadow. So how do you deal with the shadow? Well, you basically develop a different relationship. Instead of fighting, you just observe, oh, the shadow is moving this way. So it becomes a shadow boxing instead of demolition of the jaws or breaking the teeth. It becomes an exercise in high level of energy awareness. Well, that would be, in my understanding, the high level of next evolution step in martial arts.
Yes, it will be. It isn't there yet, but they've taken the first step, which is the power of integration. And then they're going to take that even further to where they realize this is a waste of good energy, actually. They could be healing people with this power that they've got. They're all powerful little buggers. This guy, this student of mine, he takes me down there to do feng shui for his groups and stuff like that. And
how about Qigong for his?
and I realize it's a phase he's going through, just like our little mutual friend that we have. It's a phase, and I gotta let him get through it. You know, you can't pull on carrots and, you know, grow faster carrots and you yank on it. It doesn't work. So I just keep tending the carrots as they grow. So yes, I hope, like you just mentioned, that the whole thing does come to that level eventually, and I'm sure it will. It's a natural evolution, the evolution of things.
Right. Well, I've been
towards unity.
I've been working and dialoguing with people who are in this realm of mixed martial arts lately, and it's interesting to see how it has to be the next step. Otherwise, it's going to be just a gladiator type of entertainment. And the next steps in this particular direction would require some role models who basically present this as a possibility that people see, oh, this is possible to actually attain this level of mastery. So, like in Kung Fu, there are masters who demonstrate their mastery in such a clear way that they don't even have to fight the opponent. They just look at him, and the opponent doesn't know what to do because he just realizes, whatever I do, I'm just gonna get my ass beat really quickly. Or, you know, the swordsman in ancient Japan or medieval Japan. They didn't have to draw the sword because they just came to the conclusion, no, you're good, I'm good, we don't have to kill each other.
Let's go to lunch. Let's have some tea. Master used to do that. His wife told me that you couldn't even approach him to fight him without papers. So I studied with this one and this one, and he'd check the papers, yeah, okay, you qualify. And then he'd go out in the backyard, boom, 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 and then Master would go back in, wash his hands, and finish putting needles in the patient in front of him. And sometimes they would fight, and sometimes they wouldn't. And so when they wouldn't was high level time. Master Nee said, I only met one other person that had poisonous palms, and we sensed it right off the bat, so we went to lunch. Didn't fight, we just went to lunch. And he said, and then the guy took me home, and I met his wife and realized that she didn't know he had that. It was such a secretive thing with him. That he had that, you know, they used to pound hot sand and develop this. Well, he touched me once and paralyzed the right side of my eye. It was in my book. Even in the old book, I think that story was in there. Because I didn't believe it, and yet he did it. Because I've been to some conferences, and I think maybe you were there at one of them, where this, what do they call him, the Master of the Year, would demonstrate how he could knock a student over 20 feet away.
Yeah.
And so I went over there by the student, because I knew he'd do it again. And I was going to jump in front of him to see if I felt anything. But I killed two birds with one stone with that one. Not only jumping in front of him, and I didn't feel a thing coming off the Master of the Year, Conference Master of the Year. I blocked the guy's view behind me without realizing it, and then I jumped out of the way, and then he jumped back about 3 or 4 seconds too late because he couldn't see the teacher doing his little thing so that he could bounce back at the correct time. Oh, was that embarrassing. He still made Master of the Year, by the way, so I quit going to those conferences. And I said, this is ridiculous. I mean, the more extreme master they find, the more they honor them. And
well, the more
extreme. Remember the guy yanked the refrigerators around, it was his testicles. I mean, the penis was involved too. And he had a little flap. He was very discreet about it. But he was yanking a refrigerator with his dick. And it was pathetic.
Well, there must be some reason for doing that.
Just to show his incredible power over that part of his body. And yeah, that was a demonstration of his power.
So he has a lot of female students now.
Yeah, right, yes. Yeah, they flock after him, sure.
So there has to be, the reasons why people do all kinds of things. When people do, for example, demonstrations of their power, prowess, the feats of power that they perform, there must be a reason why they're doing that. So they probably are either trying to entertain, or try to prove that they're capable of something, or try to impress people so that they would want to study with them, or they just have nothing else to do, so they just do it because they're bored.
Yeah.
Like pulling the refrigerator with a dick.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Massady, when I said he paralyzed me with a touch, that was after like about 8 years with him. And he just did it once, and it was private with me. He didn't show off with it, and no need to. He just did it because he knew I was skeptical about the whole thing. I didn't believe it was possible.
I would be skeptical of somebody pulling the refrigerator with a dick.
Oh,
If they push with
no,
it,
that's you can go online and
if
see
they push with it, then it's going to be a
yeah,
different
right.
story.
That'd be different. Yeah, you can go online. They're online. Yeah, not only refrigerator cars, they'll yank cars around with their dicks too. So.
If they pull the cars, that's one thing. But if they push the cars, I will respect that.
Okay. All right. Good.
So
All right.
that is taken care of. That back to the nature of the energy arts. Where do you envision, let's say, in 10 or 20 or 40 years from now, the Qigong in America would be if it keeps going the way it's going now?
Well, provided that humanity lasts 20 more years,
That's the biggest
we'll
option.
just assume that humanity is still here. And I'm not too excited about these warm-blooded, milk-sucking, hairy mammals as any great benefit to the planet myself. So if humanity doesn't make it, I'm not going to be terribly upset. But if
well,
it
they probably
does,
will take a lot of other beings with them if they go.
yeah, that's true too. And so if the little cancer of the planet, which is us, continues, who knows what's going to be there. But if it's going at the rate that it's going now, there probably won't be any high-level stuff even to be seen anymore, unfortunately.
So it's going to be
Well,
just
now,
mediocrity.
since I'm an immortal, I'm going to be here forever, so at least one little element's going to be left as to what's possible, but I don't see it hardly anywhere else.
And by high level, you mean there would be people who would be demonstrating some feats of power you were just joking about?
Or hopefully just the ability to play, be playful with it, and not too serious with it, that kind of stuff. Most of these guys that are way too serious about it. These tournaments, they're very serious, and they come up after, why'd you give me the score you gave me, and blah, 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 what's wrong with you, and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, lighten up and learn. And, I ended up half the time on the card saying, boy, that was gorgeous ballet, but it wasn't Tai Chi. And I actually had to take notes, not me, I'm one of the few that did. I could tell someone exactly why they got the score I did. The others, the Chinese, just say, more practice, you just mean, well, that's a cop-out. Mm-hmm. They don't tell them how to improve, and that's the only advantage to a tournament, or the only, I think, good reason for a tournament is that they're going to learn something. But if they're there to get their gold medal, and they're the only one in the division that got the gold medal without even doing anything, by the way, which is a farce. and if they do get the gold, and push hands has become two walruses banging together, sumo wrestlers banging their fat little carcasses together and out muscling the other guy. It's really kind of embarrassing anymore. But every once in a while, just this last tournament, there was a tournament in Berkeley here about 3 weeks ago. That was the last one. And there was one or two real sensitive and proficient people in there out of about 20, which isn't a bad average nowadays. But I suspect it's just going to keep degenerating. I remember one time two of the fairly accomplished people faced each other, and everybody stood up and applauded when they were done. They were still trying to outmaneuver the other or whatever, get them off balance, but they did it in such a an accomplished way that you can tell that they've been doing it for a long time. And the rest of them, it's just, I got a technique. Ready, get set, go, boom, you know. Ready, get set, go, boom, you know, nuts. And, but if you got somebody that can't adjust after 2 times of getting hit in a certain way and you can't adjust, you deserve to lose, you know. But we actually call them off. Chris Lut is really respected and loved in that, and there's a Chinese guy there, yeah, all those guys. If we see nothing but the bang and the walrus, we say, you've got 3 warnings now that neither one of you are doing real push hands. We're going to eliminate you, and we do. We just stop the tournament, and that's it. Not the tournament, we stop them. and keep praying that somebody will come along and knows what they're doing. And so that's, we're trying to get some quality.
How about Qigong?
There isn't too much Qigong at the tournaments. It's different Tai Chi styles.
Oh, I mean, how about the evolution of Qigong in America in general, and perhaps what you observe and where it's going with?
We're learning from each other, which is good. People are more knowledgeable in different things than they used to. Qigong, when it first came out, everybody didn't have too many sources to draw from. But with the conferences and meeting each other and hopefully learning from each other, or at least observing each other, their knowledge of different styles is getting better. I'm not so sure they've developed the Qi that much yet, but they are looking at different ways of doing different things. So I'm happy about that. But still, there's a reluctance, there's a lack of time to practice. You know, their lives are so busy now, you're checking calendars 2 weeks ahead, you know, that's ridiculous. And people are too busy consuming things, things they can't live without. And they just don't seem to have the time that we did in the old days, when we took the time. And when it was recognized as significant in our lives.
So we recognize as significant, of high importance.
Yes.
And essentially that is the high level of priority in us,
Yes.
in our lives. And if we see that there are some other things that are of higher priority, for example, consumption you're talking about, well, we'll do that instead of Qigong.
That's right, yep.
So what would be...
Some of us are, 70 and look 50, so that impresses people to do it. But many Western doctors are recommending, I would say, 30 to 50% of sales, my DVD sales, which is still quite phenomenal, by the way, they call up and they say, my doctor recommended Tai Chi for what ails me and whatever. So the Western doctors are starting to see the sense of it, so that's good.
Most of Tai Chi, they don't recommend Qigong, do they?
No, they haven't heard of Qigong yet, and that's why I call the business Tai Chi. I lure them in with Tai Chi and then slip them Qigong when they're not looking. So I run my business, yeah.
Great. Well, any words of wisdom that you would like to share with our viewers and listeners before we conclude our conversation?
Hopefully every word was wise up till now, and nothing new to add. Let's just do this again next year and see where I am next year. It'll probably totally contradict where I am now, so stand by.
It sounds great. Well, thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure to interview you once again for our show, and it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to observe how our arts develop over the next years and decades.
Yes, it sounds like we're doing similar things. I mean, the way we're teaching people, it sounds similar.
Well, if you do it for a little bit of time and you see that it doesn't work, you change it, try that, and see it doesn't work, try something else. Finally, you'll run into something that works.
That's right. Yep.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.